For some reason, I rarely ever see or hear anyone talking about Craig of the Creek, be it online or in real-world conversation. But to be fair, I haven't had a face-to-face conversation with anyone but my cat for over a year now, so I could be completely off base here.
Hey Sophie, what's your opinion on Craig of the Creek?
But ever since I discovered Craig of the Creek, I've been wanting to talk about it more and more, which was actually a bit of a challenge, as to me, I would consider this show to be the perfect cartoon. Not that it's better than everything else, but rather perfect in that if I had a checklist of things that a cartoon should have for creating widespread appeal, it would not only cross off all those boxes, but it would also add on new ones, providing a roadmap of sorts for what contemporary kids' cartoons should aspire to be. Because the fact of the matter is that Craig of the Creek is E for everyone. Now, I recognize that the ESRB doesn't necessarily rate TV programs, that job falls under the FCC's jurisdiction, but when I say that it's E for everyone, I mean that Craig of the Creek is clearly reaching towards a wider audience, which is the young as well as the young at heart. An E for everyone game like Super Mario, for example, isn't just going to be enjoyed by current day kids, but by the adults that grew up with the Bing Bing Wahoo Man as well. There are also a ton of obvious yet top-notch video game references in this show, especially in regards to Sonic the Hedgehog. So all of that admittedly helped inspire this E for everyone statement that I'm making. Blue hedgehogs, or I guess fast ferrets aside, when you watch Craig of the Creek, you will most definitely be reminded of what it was like to be a kid, whether it be how you saw the world or chose to spend your free time when you weren't at school. Or maybe, it might even remind you of some aspects of your current adult life. You see, the creek itself acts as a microcosm of society. If you remember the popular Disney cartoon Recess, the playground in that show worked in almost exactly the same way, give or take a couple of facets that are either absent or come into play in the loose overarching story of the show. These environments each have their own set of rules that all kids abide by in order to make the most out of their time spent there. It's a clever structure that provides writers with an endless amount of opportunities for storylines, unique conflicts, as well as constant opportunities to introduce a growing cast of diverse characters. In fact, I think that the strongest aspect of Craig of the Creek is its characters, and I think that that's really saying something since there are honestly way too many to keep track of.
It's that one kid, Todd, from the 10 Speeds. You remember him, right?
Similar to how Recess had subsections of kids like the Ashleys, the Diggers, and the Kindergartners, Craig of the Creek seems to double down on this idea. We have the Junior Forest Scouts, the 10 Speeds, the Sewer Kids, the Tea Timers, the Paintballers, the Horse Girls, the Elders of the Creek, the Witches of the Creek, the Ninja Kids, the Honeysuckle Rangers, the Fredites, the Alliance of Science, and the Stump Kids, which is the group name of our three protagonists, Craig, Kelsey, and JP. But if that sounds like a lot, just wait, because I haven't even mentioned the individual kids who either don't belong to a group or get episodes dedicated to introducing and or developing their characters. Let me just take another deep breath here. Aaron, Kit, Bobby, Wildernessa, Stax, the Timekeeper, Tomon, Junklord, the Green Poncho, Carter Brown, Paloma, Priest Kid, Sailor Boy, Scooter Girl, Roger, Big Red, Turner, Secret Kid, Jerry, Sparkle Cadet, Helen, and Zoe. And not only am I definitely missing a couple of characters in that mix, but we also have the families of our main trio to count as well, but more on them in a bit. This show is filled to the brim with characters, and what blows my mind especially about this is that all of these kids are memorable in their own way. Nobody who is ever given a name seems to fade from memory, whether they just make a brief appearance or have an entire episode dedicated to introducing them. Like take Roger for instance. I can't think of more than 2 or 3 episodes that he's shown up in, but I'm never going to forget this Gollum looking ass kid, no matter how hard I try.
Leave now and never come back.
But what I think is so great about having this abundance of characters is that at some point while you're watching, there will be some kid that shows up that you instantly recognize from your own life. Whether it's a former classmate that you remember eating lunch with every day, or maybe even a younger version of yourself. Like for example, I'm this guy.
Do you guys remember Ed, Ed, and Eddie? Oh man, do you guys remember SWAT Cats? Do you guys remember Dexter's Laboratory?
Okay, that's actually just present day me attempting to make conversation with people. My point remains nonetheless, as Craig of the Creek stands as a love letter to the experience of childhood. Even if you didn't have a creek of your own to play in, as I sure as hell didn't, the way in which all of the kids choose to spend their time there is for sure going to resonate with you to at least some capacity. But believe it or not, there is more that this show offers outside of the goings-on at the creek, which we see through the interactions that Craig, Kelsey, and JP have with their respective families. Yep, just like the Fast and the Furious, the show is all about family. Is that even how Vin Diesel sounds? I don't know. I've never seen a Fast and Furious movie. I just know that they talk about family a lot in that franchise. Craig's family is kind of the best. He's the middle child with a grumpy older brother that's in the latter half of high school, and a little sister who I can only best describe as perpetually living her best life. This family leans very hard into wholesome territory, with Craig's mom and dad managing to not just be good parents, but cool parents as well. Like, I don't think any of these kids are gonna need therapy by the age of 20, and that is saying a lot nowadays. I have a lot of love for the Williams family, as each of them seems to offer a different brand of comedy, while at the same time being grounded enough in reality to provide us with a lot of relatable family moments as well. In fact, I think that the interactions between Craig and Bernard are my favorite, as I have too many memories to count with my own older brother where we would clash in similar ways.
Bye, Bernard. Have fun at work.
Considering that Craig is our title character, it makes sense for his family to be universally relatable. But by being so relatable, they unfortunately do not contribute much to Craig's depth as a character, as most conflicts involving him and his family are almost entirely situational to the context of an episode. Which, you know, makes sense given that this series is mostly episodic. It's just that Craig's character isn't necessarily defined by his family. But I do think that his two best friends are a different story. Kelsey doesn't have anything similar to the same home life as Craig. Instead, she lives with her dad Neil, who is a widower. It initially comes as a shock to first-time viewers, as the mention of Kelsey's mother being deceased is dropped very casually. But I honestly think that that's the best way to introduce such a delicate subject matter, as not only many kids who are watching this likely have yet to experience the traumas of losing a loved one or, God forbid, a parent, but it's clear that Kelsey, on the surface at least, has made her peace with it, which speaks a lot to the kind of person that she is. It's not a defining characteristic for her, it's simply another facet that makes her compelling, especially considering the fact that she's the rowdiest and most unpredictable out of our trio. What is defining about her character, though, is the bond that she shares with her dad, who, much like his daughter, has a tendency to come off as a very intense person, which we see by how both Craig and JP always seem to be on edge in their interactions with him. Given what he's gone through prior to the events of the show, it's more than understandable that he'd be this way. But despite the menacing aura that he can accidentally give off, he has demonstrated multiple times how much he not only cares about Kelsey, but clearly respects her as an individual, which has made her into a surprisingly responsible daughter. Which feels like the complete opposite of how we see her at the creek. Like, that's her place to run wild and burn out her excess energy, which a lot of kids definitely need to do. And speaking of responsibility, Kelsey's trademark sword, that's made from cardboard and PVC, serves as a physical representation of her father's trust, as he had it made for her as a gift. She's supposed to only use it responsibly, and if she doesn't, then her dad takes it away, which we see in an episode where she accidentally does some pretty significant damage to a wall at Craig's house.
Okay, this is pretty bad.
What have you done to my home? Kelsey, run!
I bring up her sword though because I really appreciate this added significance to what could just simply be a prop. It enhances her character in a really interesting way. And like I said earlier in regards to how Craig's family doesn't contribute much to his character, as they have plenty of character to go around, Kelsey is the exact opposite. She has a lot of sides to her, as she's also a bookworm, a noble knight, a bird mom, and a rabid wildebeest of a child that you absolutely do not want to cross. And all of those different aspects of her personality feel in some way connected to the home that she comes from. But last up, we have JP, whose home life is probably the most complicated. Like a lot of kids out there, his parents are divorced, but several different layers of complexity are added onto that. His father is essentially out of the picture, living in Canada. He still has yet to make a physical appearance in the show, but it's clear from the way that JP talks about him that he has a lot of love for his dad, which makes it all the more emotional. You'd hope that at least he's got his mom there to support him, but that's not really the case either. His mom is an airline pilot, so she isn't home very often, usually arriving late in the evenings. JP talks about his mom with the same level of emotion that he expresses when talking about his dad. But with both of his parents gone, a good chunk of the responsibility for taking care of him falls on his older sister, Laura. But that's difficult as well because she's also got an insane work schedule due to her career as a nurse, which means this kid doesn't really have anyone to come home to a lot of the time. Except for Goo, because Goo is always there and he is the best.
Meow.
which probably explains why he likes going to the creek so much. While being both the purest and goofiest character in the show, I think this also speaks quite a bit to how mature and understanding JP is as well. However, we do get glimpses here and there about how this does have an effect on him. In the episode Sleepover at JP's, the group goes out to play flashlight tag with the other kids at the creek, but JP is upset about potentially missing his favorite show, Saturday Late Night Live.
Gee, I wonder what that's in reference to.
Craig and Kelsey grow increasingly tired of his constant anxiety, wondering what the big deal is about missing a show that could just be recorded. But by the end, it's revealed that his insistence is due to how it's the only show that he's able to sit down and watch with his mom. But even that's merely an excuse too, because what he really wants is to finally introduce his best friends to his mom. JP is a soft soul, and even if he doesn't blame his mom, dad, or sister for being absent a lot of the time, you can tell in these instances that his family is extremely important to him. I just want this floppy-sleeved child to be happy all the time. Is that too much to ask?
If you both will excuse me, I'm gonna go bury these emotions deep inside me like a responsible adult would.
While all three of our main characters come from very different homes, the through line for them all is just how important families are to kids. While we don't get to go home with every kid in the creek once the day is over, we do with these three, and it emphasizes a point that I think is important for everyone to realize. Even if we think that we know the people that we interact with on a daily basis, there is a lot that goes on in their lives that we might not ever be aware of. Everyone is living a different life that is unique to them, and while some may have it easier or more difficult than others, it doesn't seem to matter as much when you're a kid, especially when you have a group of supportive friends that are, in a way, an extension of your family. Because when you're a kid, all that you want to do is enjoy the moment. And that's exactly what Craig of the Creek does, episode after episode. Even though I'm in my mid-20s, with the days of playing in a creek of my own far behind me, the show somehow manages to make me feel seen in ways I don't think many other shows or films have been able to pull off before. And I honestly think that if you haven't already given this show a chance, you'll experience that same feeling as well. So that's why I think that Craig of the Creek is E for everyone.
Live and learn! If you beg or if you borrow, live and learn. You may never find your way. Whoa!
Slide Adventure 2 Battle!